Hey there and welcome to the UkeStuff channel. Today we're going to be looking at the Magic Fluke Concert Ukulele. Now about this ukulele, it was introduced in 1999. What happened at the turn of the century or right before it is Jim Beloff found a ukulele at a flea market, fell in love with it, started writing books. They were published by Hal Leonard, and it started off this current wave of the ukulele. Now, for the record, the ukulele kept going steady in Hawaii, but on the mainland, it was either seen as a folk instrument or something that Tiny Tim played at the time. So, Jim went to his sister, Phyllis, and said, we could really use a continental American-made ukulele with modern materials that would sound great but be really rugged, because you do have to care for a Hawaiian koa ukulele. There's no question about it. And these require almost no care. So Phyllis and her husband Dale came up with a plan, they came up with a design, and this is what started it all. And this year, Magic Fluke, at the end of this year actually, is finishing their celebration of 20 years in business. And this is a very, very recognizable design now, made with an ABS back and sides, a wood soundboard, happens to be Australian hoop pine, a wood neck, and then you can get a wooden fretboard. You can get other materials there, but generally an ABS fretboard as well, with sort of a slotted open headstock and generally friction tuners. So we'll talk more about this as we go. Now again, I just recently purchased this used. I've been wanting a Magic Fluke because of its history and also because they're really good instruments for quite a while. And this one came up used at a price that I couldn't ignore, and I bought it. So this is my new Magic Fluke, and let's talk about it. If you want to buy one of these brand new, they start at $249. This one also came with a bag. There are a ton of options for you, so you can kind of customize it, even to putting custom graphics on the soundboard if you want, but that always raises the price more. So the entry level is about $250 for one of these. Now, what you're getting, I say the price absolutely meets the value. It's American designed, American produced, American built. Really, they tried to keep everything local with it. And the price reflects that, a living wage in the United States of America in the pricing of this ukulele. Now, overall, I think that it has pretty much a flawless build quality. I mean, they do it right. They do the job right. You're getting what you pay for in quality. My only gripe, you might even be able to see on camera, is there is a slight gap between the edge of the neck and where the fretboard starts. And I wish that was flush. Now, some people will freak out because of the friction tuners. We can talk about that later. But in terms of build quality, that's the only thing I don't like. And it doesn't really bother me when I'm playing, but I do like all of my ukuleles that have, and that's almost all of them, where that fretboard is even and level with the neck. Now, in terms of appearance, my dad saw this and asked me if it was a balalaika. And I was like, no, although I could see suddenly where he thought that. Balalaika has that sort of triangular shape as well, or some people call it a boat paddle shape. But it's not. Again, it's a 20-year-old design that still, looks unique. Even in 2019 going into 2020, it still looks very much like a unique ukulele. And a lot of people won't know what it is. Ukulele players will. They'll definitely know what this is, and they respect the heck out of it. In fact, everybody I talk to talks about the quality of this ukulele and their lastingness. So that's definitely there. So you've got the unique shape, you've got the rounded back that a lot of people like, you've got that kind of cool headstock, and you can get it with even more options if you want. So in appearance, yeah, it is kind of plain, but it's also kind of unique. So that's what you get with that. In terms of availability, you order one, you can get one. I think with the custom features, you have to wait a little while, but I think it's pretty quick in terms of shipment. In terms of playability, the neck is actually rather wide, even for what measures as a 35 millimeter nut. So it seems wide. The strings are spaced out really rather quite wide, and the neck tapers down gradually, kind of like in steps, and does so slowly that it really feels, versus other ukuleles that I own, feels much chunkier than it really is. It really isn't, but the rate of that tapers. So I kind of wish that it tapered more quickly to the end and was I don't know, but they've got that little flat ridge there. And there are some other ukuleles that I own that are like that, like the outdoor ukulele, but yeah, it just seems a little chunky for me. Some people really struggle with this shape and the ABS, and it slips on them, and then strap buttons are really not so good. You could put a strap button up here. If you put it down here, then you can't do one of its key features, which is you can stand it, which is really nice, next to your couch or whatever, wherever you happen to be, on a table. And then if you put it here, it might get into your way when you're holding it and playing it. So yeah, so strap buttons aren't really an option. There are some people that do things like they put 3M strips and like command hooks. I don't want to mess with that, but just so you're aware of that. So in terms of playability, if you really like wide spacing, you're going to like it. For me, it's almost on the edge of being too far, especially for a concert. It's definitely playable. It's just not. There are some, I think, better laid out ukuleles, and that sounds really terrible for an ukulele that people love, but I'm just being honest with my own appraisal of it. It's not as easy for me to play this one as it is some other ukuleles. Now, in terms of sound, as you heard earlier, it's a very balanced sound, especially, again, I've put on fluorocarbon strings. I'm just not a big fan of playing with Aquilas. I love Aquila, don't get me wrong. Love their kid strings, love their sugar strings, but the white ones, the Nile Gut, I'm just not a fan of, and that's me personally. That's not saying for anybody else. But especially with the fluorocarbons, nice open tone, but you definitely do hear the depth of the ABS back and the kind of the darkness that brings. So it's not a cheap tone, but it certainly isn't the tone of a solid wood koa ukulele either, which you wouldn't expect. The koa ukulele is still going to be another $700 or more than this one. So it's definitely not a cheap tone, and it's easy to see why people really like it. In terms of volume, I think it's nice and loud. You can really hit it as loud as you want to. It's very punchy, but again, it does carry that little bit of darkness everywhere you go. So it has that kind of a dark chocolate feeling, even with the balancedness of it all the time. Now that's all subjective. Let's talk about the actual specifics of the ukulele and go from there. The scale length is concert. It's actually 15.5 inches from the 0 fret, if you notice up there. So it doesn't really run off of the nut. It's off of that 0 fret right up there to the built-in non-adjustable saddle, 15.5 inches. There are 15 frets down to there. There are no side marker dots. If you want one with side marker dots, that's a paid option. That's $15 right now extra. The body style is what we call a paddle. The soundboard is laminate Australian hoop pine. I think 3-ply plywood is how they kind of describe it, with 1 part molded ABS back and sides. The fretboard is ABS, and one of the things that I notice is that the frets themselves are really low. There are some other ukuleles that I have that the frets are significantly higher. Even my wood ukuleles, the metal frets stand up much higher. These are very, very low in that kind of connection. The bridge is also just that one, it's all one piece there. It's not adjustable, as you can see. It's not a radius fretboard. I think that would help my own playing with this instrument if it did have a little bit of a radius, but it doesn't. And obviously, they're not going to change the design for me. That's not what this video is about. It's not heavy compensated saddle. It's just level saddle. The finish uh, tends to be kind of a satin finish there. The overall length, when I measured it, was 22.5 inches. I think the website says it's 23. And it weighs in at 1 pound, 2 ounces. And it feels heavier than it is. It's pretty balanced, and maybe a little bit towards the body, but it's balanced, but it feels more substantial than it actually really is. It weighs in there with many other ukuleles. The tuners are Grover friction tuners, and that's going to be where a lot of people are going to be afraid. Now, for the record, Grover friction tuners are great, and they work, but they can loosen, and then you do have to tighten those screws in order for them to hold a little bit tighter. There are some options that you can do here. They do sell peg heads, which are a sort of internal geared tuner that sort of look like violin pegs, and you can have those installed. And I know some people are playing with the brand new Graphtec tuners as well on here. I think I'm going to leave it with the friction tuners for now until I start having problems with them. But generally, they're holding for me pretty well. The real kicker with friction tuners is that if you turn it just a smidgen too far, you can miss your mark, and then you have to go back and try again. And I think you actually saw that at the beginning of the video when I was trying to tune the C string. So that's why people really, struggle with that. They don't like them loosening, but these are not cheap. These are quality tuners. Now, the action at the first fret is 0.5 millimeters right there, and it is 2.75 millimeters at the 12th fret right there, which is very comfortable for me. That's pretty much where I like it to be. The nut width is 35.01 millimeters, so 35 millimeters. But this is where it gets kind of crazy. The space between the strings is really spaced out. So I measured it at 9.30 millimeters between the strings at the first fret, or 30.30 millimeters G to A, which is right on par with a lot of 38 millimeter nuts used by a lot of other manufacturers. So when I've been feeling like this is harder for me to play and the spacing is more, that wasn't my imagination. The depth of the neck at the third fret, something else that I measure, is 21.5 millimeters, which is actually pretty narrow. It's not like a baseball bat, but again, I think the shaping of this neck and how gradually it goes down or quick, whichever way you want to think about it, you can actually see the delineated line there where it goes flat. I would like that to be quicker, I think, so that it would feel smaller in your hand. Now again, I'm going to trust them that they make the neck the thickness that they need it to be to support the instrument, so I'm not telling them to change anything. Just I'm trying to find reasons why it is harder for me to play than I really think it is. So let me kind of summarize now the whole Magic Fluke here. To me, it is synonymous with Jim Beloff and his work for the ukulele world. People the world over use that yellow book and the blue book, and that is by him. I mean, he sparked this current revolution for ukulele, which is fantastic. I think that's great. And so therefore, I cannot separate this instrument from him and the role that it played and continues to play in our culture. They do some really great work. Libraries can buy a set of these, and they can do custom engraving on the neck. They can even do custom graphics on the front for the library, things like that. Or schools. They are pricey though, and that's really kind of where it comes into, is that there are some other ABS ukuleles out there that have a very similar sound but a lower price tag. But then the question becomes, are you worried about this? And let's see if we can get the camera to see that. It says Fluke, made in USA, and that's no joke. So if you are a person from the United States, especially the continental United States, and you want an ukulele, you want a high quality ukulele that are known to last, known to weather the conditions, and you want to buy an American continental made product that's going to stand. Again, you can go to Hawaii and buy Hawaii uke, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're fantastic, but they're not going to be the kind of ukulele that you can leave in your car. You're not going to really want to necessarily drag it on the beach and leave it in the sand, whereas this one is kind of made to withstand a lot of those conditions. So if you're looking for that, this is your option from the continental US, and it's lasted and it's tested, and over 27,000 of them have been sold. This one, incidentally, is $20,355, and I contacted the company and asked when it was made, and they said probably about 6 or 7 years ago at their current plant, and it's made in New Hartford, Connecticut. So when you buy a Fluke, you get an instrument with a design that's lasted 20 plus years. There are some others if you're interested. The Flea, for example, and they also have violins, a new mandolin, basses. They've got a bunch of things. You get an instrument that's durable, it looks good, looks unique, and plays well, sounds great. And again, if you have large hands in particular, I think you might really, really like this instrument. There are people who talk about the fact that, again, that they struggle holding this. You can buy as an option strips that you can put on the back that are sort of grip strips that will help you hold it so that it doesn't slip. Again, I don't see that problem for myself, but I'll just take people's word for where they're at with it. So what would I rate it? I cannot ignore the legacy of this ukulele or its popularity or its known quality in the ukulele world. So even though I struggle a little bit with the spacing and a little bit with it feeling like it's a bigger neck than it is, I'm not going to say that I'm 100% right with that either. So I would rate this at a 4.0. There are better deals on the internet when it comes to similar ukuleles, but there is nothing comparative in terms of made in the USA and durability. So that's what I would leave it at for ukuleles. I hope that helps. If you're checking out the Fluke, if you end up buying one, you are not going to regret it. Definitely it's recommended to you. I think it's great. I just waited until I found one used at the price that I was looking for. So thanks for watching the video. We'll be back soon with more material, and we'll catch you next time.